Welcome to this video on 5 signs of trauma in your business. This is something we actually don't talk about. And when I was doing the research for this, I found information on trauma and what it means. And I found some information on what it is to be in a business or as an employee. But what I didn't find much was when you're running your own business. Now, this can apply also if you are in a career, but I really wanted to talk to us, and particularly as women in small business, on how something that's changed you, something that's happened in your life that's really overwhelmed you, it's changed you irrevocably, can affect your business. I'm Chantal, psychotherapist and Reiki master here at Unfold Your Freedom. Now, for many years, I didn't understand, so I'm also going to bring in my own personal story into this because I want to weave in how it can affect and give you some ideas. Now, you might not relate to everything, but it'll just get you starting to think. So for years, when I was healing from my own trauma, I really focused on my personal life only. It never occurred to me to see how I'd been translating that into running my business until a few years ago. And so many things fell into place. I was able to really be able to forgive myself for my business not going where I want it to go. So you see, this can happen. You can still be successful, but not the way you want, or you might be successful at all. So what happened for me was I then in the end chose to dissolve a company. I'd created my own skincare range because I also needed to let go of the energy. I wanted to regroup. I'd done my diploma in counseling and support women through that. So all this is healing, but it takes time to get you there. It takes time to have forgiveness and acceptance and want it to be visible again. What is trauma? Now I've got to put a link here because to my trauma video, because I don't want to go to too much depth, but trauma can be anything. And as Peter Levine says, who's really a world-renowned person, and I read it in his Walking the Tiger, trauma can happen from something that's, as he uses the word, benign. It can be anything. We often think trauma is huge and it doesn't always happen to us, not those everyday things that can happen. It does happen. It's the story that you bring into it, the overwhelm that you experience, and your stories and your history. You might have had childhood trauma. So that can create then complex trauma. So just don't underestimate all of this. So what happens is then you bring that into the way you run your business, how you are in your business, how you come across, the relationships you build, your pricing. So the first thing we're going to look at is, I'm just going to get my notes here, is concentration. Concentration and focus is very hard when you've had a huge experience. And what happens is the trauma just rewires you, it changes you. You lose your sense of self, your self-esteem, and your confidence. Not only that, you're constantly on high alert. You're waiting for something to happen. So you've got all this adrenaline flowing through your body. Now, remember, these are my words, and it's not for diagnoses. But if something resonates, reach out or actually go to a professional just to get perhaps a diagnosis or to understand where you're coming from. And then I can support you in taking it deeper, in coming back to your purpose, which we'll talk about in a moment. So concentration is really powerful here. So what happens is you can't sit down, or you want to sit down, you've got a lot on your plate and you can't focus. You think of something else. You look at social media, you get up and walk about. And what happens is your to-do list just gets bigger and bigger. You get more and more frustrated because you can't hang in there. It is really hard to stay there. Memory comes in. You forget things. You don't have much memory. So of course, this creates a lot of anxiety and you're not effective. You're not productive. And of course, what happens is you want to make money. This all stops you from creating the business that you want, leading the lifestyle that you want, and bringing money in. That's what the purpose of one of the main reasons is to make money, to lead the life you want, and to support other people. So what happens here is you need to learn to prioritize and make a plan. Often that's difficult because when you have had a big experience, you're so busy struggling in the everyday life. You don't know how to make a plan. I know I didn't, which will now bring me to number 2, is how to visualize. So because you're told through coaches and mentors and groups, and you see everywhere, you're meant to visualize and see the bigger picture. I found that really hard to do. I could not understand why I was unable to do that until my psychologist explained it to me, that there's a sense of despair, you lack in hope. And I didn't realize I was even feeling any of this. So this is quite interesting for me to talk about. You get this real sense of hope. You can't see a future. Now, I've got this loose goal, so I call it loose goals. Now, I had to take the pressure off me and by not having to get it right, not having to be exactly what other people said. So I know for me, I want to support women who've been through trauma in their business to come back to a place of joy and love and confidence and excitement to be able to shine their lights. Now, in my original business, I had a similar one. I wanted to use my natural skincare range for women to feel beautiful, because when you feel beautiful, you feel free. So I've always known that, but I couldn't go into doing a detailed plan for 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, or working my way back. I found that really hard. So I've had to learn to let go of that and just trust flow, have some structure. So I have created structure and just allow it to happen for me as well. So that's really important to know, that sometimes you just got to let go of everything that you knew, step into the unknown, which is really difficult because you need to feel safe, you need to feel trust yourself, and then just go with it. Ever since I've been able to do that, my life has truly changed. Because you can see possibilities, you can see excitement, you can step out and take risks and have adventure. So that comes to the third one, visibility. So of course, when you are feeling really down, you don't like who you look, you don't like how you sound, you don't like how you feel, you're feeling a fraud because you're putting on this mask. Because that's what happens. We put on this beautiful mask because that's what we have taught to do. So we create visibility in that sense of, we create a vision of how we want people to see it. And also it helps us to get out of bed, to get out the door, to work, go into networkings, to see people face to face, even online. Because if you don't feel comfortable with who you are, if you don't value and trust what you do and own what you're doing, and you're forever all over the place, you can't concentrate, well, you don't like to be visible. So like sitting here in front of the video, this took me a long time to get here. I had to do a lot of practice. What will people think? My voice, my double chin, have I got enough makeup on? All those things come into play. What if someone makes a negative comment? What if someone doesn't like what I do? If someone says something like that, how am I going to cope? Because when you've been through trauma, it can also trigger this sensitivity in you, which also can be your superpower. So remember that. So it's also wonderful to be able to refrain these things. So it's hard to be visible, that's what I said. And also part of it is because you don't feel safe. There's this high need for it to be predictable. And life isn't predictable. Life is always transient, but something when you've been in trauma, you want to keep it safe. Because this brings me to the fourth point, which is micromanaging. You so want to be in control of everything to remain safe. I know I did. I found it really hard to walk out the door. And every time I did, I had to visualize myself getting there without someone, because I was rear-ended. And that's what triggered me into complex PTSD. And I didn't want to go out. So I micromanaged everything. Well, of course you can't. Once you walk out the door, there's so many other variables around. But it took me a long time to not only feel safe in the world, but safe within me. So as I said, I micromanaged every little detail. I had my day really planned out like this, to the point where it was so rigid that if something happened that was out of the ordinary, it would throw me in a spin. Then I'd go into anxiety and potentially have a panic attack, because that happens too. So I became rigid. My days became rigid. So that doesn't allow for flow to come in, for your intuition to come in, for other things to be able to be working on your behalf. Because I lost faith as well. I lost sight of my intuition. I lost sight of my bigger picture, because my mind was scrambled. It was like spaghetti in there. So something happens in there that changes you, changes your personality. So what happens is then it creates anxiety, inefficiency, you're not as productive. And of course, what happens is you don't bring the money in, okay? And it's difficult to manage people. So if you have got staff, you don't know how to hand over because you don't trust them. It's basically you don't trust yourself. And you you can't delegate and trust the person will get the job done, and doing it also in their way to give them freedom to bring their energy into your business. But also what can happen is, and this happened for me, you abdicate. You're so exhausted, you're so overwhelmed, and you're not understanding what's going on. So that comes back to memory. You can't put all the bits together. So you abdicate. You give them the responsibility. And I did that, and it didn't work out for me because I was no longer watching what was going on. I took my eye off the ball, which was really had a big effect on my business. So you get lost in the detail. Because all you do is you get so caught up in all the detail that you can't see the bigger picture. You can't do anything else, right? So it creates a narrow vision. And in that, everything has to be so neat and tidy. I know for me, neat and tidy, because if it isn't neat and tidy, my mind gets confused, creates anxiety. I can't get out there, okay? So it is all about safety. So coming back to difficult to manage people, because of course that brings me to the fifth thing. It's about having relationships, because business is all about having relationships with your clients, with stockists if you have them, staff and coaches, mentors, and just anyone that comes into your life when you're networking. So if you don't love and trust yourself, if you don't honor who you are and your own values, it's very hard to connect to someone else. It's very easy to give them the power. You give them the authority because they know best. Because you have lost sight of who you are running your business. Of course, there's going to be things you don't know, but you give them too much of your power, of your energy. You become defensive about everything. So even though you want a coach to come in and support you and guide you, that's different. A coach gives you goals and that. A psychotherapist just guides you to support you to look at what is holding you back, what are the blocks. So what happens is you become defensive about everything. You defend, you overanalyze, you overthink, and you over-explain, you over-justify all the time. And the other person was probably thinking, what on earth is she going on about? I didn't need to know that, or whatever. So you can't say no, you don't know how to set your boundaries, and you really, as I said, rely on others, which doesn't support you in that. Doesn't help you. So as I said, it creates a dependency, and that they're the authority and they know best. And that also can be from childhood. When as a child, you're not taught how to think for yourself. You're not taught how to feel your emotions. You're not taught how to be able to support yourself and value yourself. So all these things can come into play. You also become too reliant on everything having to be perfect. Everything having to be getting it correct. So you're needing the other persons that you're relying on, their undivided attention. You need to be their number one student. You want all this attention and validation because you can't give it to yourself and you haven't given it to, and hasn't been given to you by someone else. That triggers shame, embarrassment, judgment of yourself, criticism. All this holds you back in your business. Deep breath. I feel I got on such a roll there. It's taken me a while to be able to bring this together and to be able to show you. This is only some of the ways you can do it. I will be doing other videos on how to go from self-doubt to self-trust, time management, of course, money issues. All this is part of business. I'm uploading something about you need to forgive yourself, having gratitude for what you have. All of these things support you to create a beautiful flow in your life, to be able to step into the unknown, to be able to be the light, to be able to shine your light and support whoever it is that you created your business for in their lives, because that supports you and that supports the world. So let's see what magic you can bring in. Love you to comment. If anything's resonated with you, let me know. Subscribe if you haven't, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you for watching.